Hey, what's going on guys, and welcome back. So every year I like to put out a video discussing my most anticipated monster taming games for the current year and beyond. We've done this pretty much every year since I've been in business over here on the channel, but I always find it a great way to sort of give you guys an idea of what games I'm personally looking forward to and where my focus will be throughout the year and what follows after. And as a bonus, you guys get to check out some really cool monster taming games, some of which you'll likely already know, but if you're new to the channel or just happen to stumble upon this video, hopefully you'll find something that you haven't heard of before. Monster taming games are extremely versatile in that there are several different types of monster taming experiences, from turn-based games to more action-oriented ones, and everything in between. In today's video, I'm going to be going over my top 10 personal list of games that I'm most anticipating for the year of 2024 and beyond, but as always, do note that these are my opinions, and if you feel like another game should have been on this list or placed higher or whatever, definitely let me know down below. That being said, make sure to sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Alright, so for the number 10 slot, we have Creature Keeper, a pixel art action combat game where you can recruit and utilize various monsters while maintaining control over the player character. The monsters in this game are not directly controlled, however, utilizing them strategically alongside your ability to roll dodge, use arrows and other projectiles, and a sword will pave your way to success. While I love the more standard turn-based RPG format when it comes to monster taming, I have a real soft spot for these games that really mix it up. Speaking of games that mix it up, another game that I'm really looking forward to, and have been for quite some time, is Mythcaller the Nightmare Shaman, a 2.5D platformer collectathon that allows you to take control of various monsters in real time. This game is criminally underknown, so I implore each of you to go check out the Steam page and wishlist it because the retro vibes that this game gives off just captivate me immensely. Just like in last year's version of this video, I have Nanokin and Mythcaller side by side once again, because these two games are very similar on the surface, but have various differences that make each of them unique. Much like Mythcaller, Nanokin is a 2.5D platformer collectathon, but instead of real-time combat mechanics, this game focuses on grid-based combat. Furthermore, you are able to actually build your monsters from parts, sort of like what you would do in Metabots, which I always thought was quite cool. We unfortunately do not have a set release window or date for this game just yet, but I think it'll be worth the wait when it does eventually drop. Okay, so next up on the list, we got BeastieBall, a very interesting monster taming game that kind of came out of nowhere with its Kickstarter campaign, crushed it, and now continues to make waves every time they release footage or a gameplay or an interview or whatever. BeastieBall is one of the most unique monster taming games I've seen in that it takes the sort of turn-based combat that you might be used to and centers it around this volleyball-like sport, making for a really interesting spin on the genre. Much like in something like Pokemon or any other turn-based monster taming game, you're trying to become the very best, but this time not in the typical dogfighting you're used to. Instead, you have to coach your team to success, and I don't know, just something about this makes me really want to check it out when it comes out sometime this year. Disc Creatures World is a sequel to the original Disc Creatures that came out in 2019 for Steam, this time with an upgraded visual style more reminiscent of the Game Boy Advance era rather than that of the Game Boy Color. This is a game that features 3-on-3 turn-based combat with a plethora of really cool looking monsters and a captivating central theme around discs, kind of like what Cassette Beast did for cassettes. There hasn't been a whole lot of information about the sequel just yet, but the pixel art looks really good, all of the animations look great, and judging by what I've played from the previous Disc Creatures game, I think this one's going to be awesome as well. Next up, we have the Thaumaturge, another game that you might recognize from our Everything You Need to Know in 2024 video that dropped a couple of weeks ago. This game is a more mature RPG where you play as a Thaumaturge, which is essentially this person with special abilities to interact with like the demon realm or something to that extent. It's an isometric game with some really nice visuals, and I think I've just been thirsty for something a little more mature in terms of monster taming, and while it isn't a monster collector per se, in that there's only a few monsters that you can actually tame and utilize in combat, I've been looking forward to this one, and I can't wait to cover it in February. So I'm not usually the biggest fan of roguelikes. For me, I prefer having a set world to explore and a story to follow, especially when I play a turn-based monster tamer, but I will say that I do like dungeon crawling elements, just usually I prefer them in like a post-game setting. That being said, Aethermancer is a bit of an exception here for me, because not only does it look absolutely stunning with its amazing pixel art, but it's also being developed by the same team that brought us Monster Sanctuary, which is one of the best monster taming games in the genre, with its complex but also really unique and inspired battle system, and its awesome blend of the Metroidvania and monster taming genres. This is another game that's in earlier development, so we don't have an exact date on when it's coming out, but I think it'll definitely be a treat when it does. Lumentale is another game that's planned for this year and is supposed to be coming out sometime in December. This is a turn-based RPG that's heavily story-driven, and it features up to 4-on-4 combat. In the game, you play as Trey, who, if I remember correctly, was either a cyborg or an android or something like that, who has lost their memories and is trying to figure out what's going on in the world. Fortunately for him, he has a very particular way with monsters, or Animon, which gives him the ability to utilize them in combat while participating on this journey. This is another game that has a really cool graphical style in that it's 2.5D, which if you haven't figured out by now is something that I really like, and is being developed by the same team that brought us Pokemon Xenoverse. Now, I know I mention this almost every time I bring up this game, but I think it's a pretty significant thing to note, considering that that should give us a perspective on as to who's making this game and where it's coming from. I definitely look forward to it, and we'll keep you guys up to date on its development. I'm sure you guys figured Palworld would be on this list before you even clicked the video, but yes, I am thoroughly looking forward to Palworld. Not only do I think it's going to be something that rocks the genre, I also think it's going to be a fun game overall based on what I've seen. Palworld, if you don't already know, is an action survival game coming to Steam and Xbox later this month, and allows you to pretty much do whatever you want, with or even to your pals. You can be a douche that abuses them, or you could be a decent human being and utilize them as partners. Either way, the game seems to take a lot of inspiration from Ark, in that it's got crafting, farming, base buildings, and it allows you to use these creatures in combat, controlling your main character while the pals sort of utilize their various moves or even weapons to help you. The game's coming out in early access very soon, and I think it's going to be a good time when it does. So for my number one slot, unfortunately, it doesn't have a lot of footage behind it, but that's Nexomon 3, the upcoming 3D RPG from the same team that brought us Nexomon and Nexomon Extinction. The former games were extraordinarily fun Pokemon-esque RPGs that featured some pretty epic story narratives whilst also not taking themselves too seriously, but did lack a little bit in the battle complexity department, whereas Nexomon 3 plans to turn the formula on its head by involving multi-combat, weighted typings, and it takes the game into an open-world 3D environment. From what I've seen so far, the game looks interesting, and I'm mostly excited for the game due to the team's previous works. So while some watching that have never played a Nexomon game before might be thinking that it's weird to have this as my number one choice when I'm mostly just showing off screenshots here, but I gotta reiterate, the developers behind this franchise have earned my respect, and anything they put out is something to absolutely look forward to. But yeah, there you go, guys. Those are my top 10 picks for 2024. Now, do note that some of these are obviously repeats from the video that came out 2 weeks ago, discussing everything you need to know in 2024. I tried to make sure that there wasn't too many repeats, but realistically, that's going to be the case when I have a video literally going over everything that happens in a year. I did, however, want to discuss my personal most anticipated games separate from that video because, like I've stated multiple times, I think it's important for my audience to understand where my mindset is when it comes to upcoming releases. All that being said, make sure you guys let me know in the comment section which games you're most anticipated for, and don't forget to subscribe so you stay up to date on all of the latest monster taming news. Just wanted to say special thanks to all the supporters, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Tragsoft, and Candy Marunci, and I'll see you next time. Peace.